Hello and welcome to Whispers Reddit. We're thrilled to have you join our cozy corner where we dive into the most intriguing, heartwarming, and sometimes mysterious stories from Reddit. Whether you're here to unwind, get inspired, or simply enjoy a good story, you've come to the right place. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a whisper. Grab a comfortable seat, relax, and let's embark on this storytelling journey together. Thank you for being part of our community. Let's get started. After 3.5 years of marriage, I quietly left after learning of my wife's affair. A year later, my ex-wife who had ghosted me found me after learning of her adultery, and I moved to the hills. I'm not sure why I'm writing this, but maybe it will help someone now that the incident is over and I've moved on. After learning of my wife's affair in February 2018, I worked a contract job that occasionally required a lot of travel, but also allowed me to work from home when I returned as a director of A. I met my wife, who is now my ex, at a cookout hosted by a mutual acquaintance 5 years ago. We clicked right away after we started talking, and to be honest, I felt that being with a woman who was so attractive and articulate was a huge advantage. My wife held a very lucrative position at a technical sales company, but things had become a little strained because she was working longer and longer hours and I was traveling for work. Despite this, we still had what I would call a fairly excellent marriage background. We fell in love after a few weeks of dating, and when we met at each other's apartments, the clothes just fell off. After 18 months of dating, we were married and moved into a big apartment while saving for a down payment on a house. However, after 3 years of marriage, things started to change, even though I still had feelings for her. I noticed that she would argue over trivial things when I brought up all the late hours and the increasingly frequent work outings, which she would grow more and more accustomed to since she had been climbing the corporate ladder. She would argue that it was a necessary part of paying the dues, at least that was her explanation. She told me that since I was also away for weeks at a time, I had no right to argue with her. In fact, I had only been taking vacations for 3 or 4 days every 5 weeks, so I reassured her that I could definitely manage reducing my travel time. There was never a resolution to these incredibly repetitive arguments, and when I looked back, I realized that I was not aware that my wife was experiencing an. Although she had a work cell phone and may have been using it, I didn't see the secret texting that I had read about in other articles. She used our spare bedroom as a home office and spent a lot of time there. Other than our deteriorating sexual life and her consistently late work hours, I would never have suspected anything. I just assumed that she was worn out from her job. However, being turned down so frequently when I tried to start a sexual relationship had taken a toll on my ego. Around September 2017, Kathy started returning. Instead, she went from going home from work and spending the evening at a work engagement 1 night a week to more than 3 nights a week. While I'm not naturally jealous, I know that she would be watched and that she would have to turn off some of the men at work, even though she worked with more male CEOs than female ones. She gave off the impression that she was primarily focused on her work. The first time I suspected she was cheating was a month before D-Day. Before she went home, she had made a. During a quick stop at the grocery store, I was asked to help her with her shopping. As I was getting some things out of the back seat, I noticed something pink glinting from just under the front passenger seat of her car. It was a bra that belonged to my wife. She liked certain brands, so I knew it was hers. Looking back, I can see that the bra was a warning sign. She always takes it off first from under her clothes when she's feeling very lustful. I'm not sure why, but when I saw this, I felt sick. I couldn't understand why her bra was under the seat, so I didn't say anything more. My heart must have been thumping so hard that I almost fainted because when I brought the bags back to the kitchen, Kathy asked how I was feeling and said that I looked like I had seen a ghost. I chose to ignore her comment, trying my best not to look upset or dishonest. That night, I decided to try to find out if she was seeing someone, and the next day I started. I decided to temporarily put the idea of an affair out of my mind and think about giving her more of my attention. I made a delicious dinner and set the dining table with elegant plates, silverware, and candles. One Friday after work, I bought a beautiful bottle of wine and an arrangement of flowers. I pointed out the dinner and everything I had made when she arrived as usual. I had no proof that she works in an office building downtown, and we live in a fairly large city. I won't explain the kind of anger I was feeling at the time, but I had had enough. I took my work cell phone and threw it in her back seat while she was taking a shower. She apologized and said she was sorry, but she had to go to a neighborhood hangout to meet up with her coworkers. She also mentioned that she needed to take a shower first, but that she could have a little snack with me before she left. I guess I went completely silent because I guess my insides flipped out. After taking a shower, she got ready and looked gorgeous as usual. I went into the kitchen to find her, threw the food and flowers in the trash, and then she asked me if I was angry. She gave me a strange look and said, "I'm sad that you never want to do anything with me." She became upset and sarcastically remarked on my short fuse while telling me to stop acting like a kid. I muttered foolish me as I stood there letting everything to happen. Settle in for once. I thought we should spend the evening together, but she just gave me a sly smile and left. I took out my second phone and started following my work phone. When she left and arrived at the bar, which she frequently visits with her coworkers, about 20 minutes away, I saw her stop, so I decided to go find her car. Sure enough, it was in the bar's parking lot. I waited to see if I could see her in my car across the street. I felt like a stalker, but I had to get over my fear of her whereabouts. I saw her leaving the bar with a man about an hour after I arrived. He looked like an executive from her company, and he grabbed her, pulled her close, and kissed her. My body went completely numb, and my stomach began to knot up. They went to another car and got into it together, and when their car pulled out, I tried to keep up with them, and sure enough, they drove to a hotel 10 minutes away. As I pulled to a stop on the street next to the hotel, I saw them leave holding hands and enter. I'm not sure if I had an out-of-body experience or blacked out, but as I recovered, I felt like I needed a drink. My life started down a path I never would have imagined when I just started driving out of town, replaying everything I had just seen, crying out of anger. As much as I hate to admit it, I found a nice little tavern about 30 miles away, and I stopped in and ordered a drink. You could say that a man sat down next to me and started a conversation even though I didn't feel like talking. There was something about this guy that made me feel comfortable, and eventually my wife's infidelity came up. I told her that all I wanted to do was get away from her and forget about her. "You're not alone, buddy," he replied, half smiling. The bartender said that I looked like someone had taken the wind out of my sails, so I guess I looked like death warmed over. Even though I was aware of my pain, his comments somehow jolted me out of my gloom. I've always been able to see things rationally, and he was absolutely correct. We identified ourselves as Ree, and I really liked his salt-of-the-earth vibe, even though he was more of a country guy. "Are you moving out?" Backpad gave me a quick glance, and I experienced that a few years ago. I believe there's a reason why these things happen, and your life can now take a positive or negative turn. When the time comes, Ray added, I have a mobile trailer on my land in case you feel the need to go. It might require some work and isn't very good, but why don't you come and see if you could imagine yourself temporarily residing in anything like that? I suppose I never thought to look that far ahead. I had a fight ORF flight response going on, and I knew I didn't want to be around this woman any longer. I have an idea, and I feel very sympathetic to your situation. I would appreciate it if you could watch it for me on a beautiful piece of property I own. It might help you get out of your current situation. Just a thought. Hell honey, if I could have escaped my crazy ex-husband years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to go live in his trailer or anything just to get my head straight. I added the bartender who had been listening in on the chat. Maybe this was exactly what I needed, but I felt like I had wandered into the twilight zone. I said to Ree, think about it and maybe check it out. After some time, we parted ways and decided to meet up at his house in a few days. I started to feel like I had some perspective and a chance to get away from what I thought was a horrible night out and heartache, but I also knew that I would never ever want to spend time with my wife again because I find cheating to be so disgusting and it has always been the one thing I thought I would never put up with. I spent that evening sitting on the couch when I got home. After Kathy asked me where I had been, she came out and asked me, "Where have you been?" I turned to face her and asked, I went to get drinks." She said, "Are you having an affair?" She looked surprised, but she quickly composed herself and said, "No, why would you ask me that?" I told her that I had heard she might be seeing someone at work who told you that she said someone I said, but I kept the name a secret. After saying you're being ridiculous, she accused me of being drunk and insane. Despite her obvious desire to ask more questions, I said, "We're going to a bar to enjoy some drinks with our friends." She went back to our bedroom and went to bed. Now that I had evidence that she had been lying to me for months, I decided to sleep on the sofa because I couldn't sleep at all because I kept seeing her in bed with this guy. I felt bad for myself, disgusted and hurt, but then I thought about Ray's trailer, and it made me feel better. It was almost like a revelation. The fight ORF flight response must be wrong with me because it activated automatically in the middle of my pain, and I preferred the flight response. We didn't talk much the next morning and continued the weekend as if nothing had happened. A few days later, I scheduled a meeting with Ree, and when I arrived, I saw that Ree had a beautiful ranch. The trailer was actually quite nice, about 26 feet long and fully furnished, and it reminded me of a fun spring break trip I took with my friends when I was in college. After he gave me directions, I drove over to see his ranch property, where there were hiking and biking trails nearby, lots of trees and scrub vegetation. Ree had a small cabin on a hilltop overlooking the property, with electricity and water available for the trailer, and it was near the foothills of some mountains. Ray agreed to set up the trailer for me and pull it to the spot I tried to get Kathy to. To be honest, I almost took the trailer from him. Come clean over the next few weeks, but all I received was gaslighting. I even told her straight out that if I found out she was cheating, there would be no turning back. As a result, she became even more consumed by her affair and started to lash out at me with denials that were so terrible I almost laughed. I chastised myself for not taking pictures of the two of them, and since I had no concrete proof that she had cheated, I made the decision to end this marriage after going through this emotional turmoil. In order to express my feelings to Kathy, I just started making plans while she was at work. I then discreetly started moving my belongings from the apartment to the trailer. At least I felt like I was making progress. During this time, I noticed a change in Kathy, even though she had been acting more courteously toward me. I thought it was too little, too late, and she continued to take company outings after work. One evening, I got ready as she was leaving after giving me a quick glance. Asked where I was going, and I just replied that I was meeting up with some friends, but you wouldn't enjoy all the shop talk and you don't know them. I interrupted her as she started to ask more questions because she used to say this to me every time I asked if I might go with her on office outings. "All right, have a good time," she added with a slightly offended look. "I definitely will." I started making Newt Ains while working on the trailer and hanging out with Ree at the bar. I felt better after spending time with Ray's amazing family, and Kathy told me that she would be traveling for work the following week. She said the executive team and a few department heads were going. When I asked who was going, she replied, "I hope you have a great time with your boyfriend." I looked at her and instantly regretted saying that because it sparked a furious outburst. I also decided to cut back on my drinking because I didn't want to develop any unhealthy habits. I knew better than to drown myself in sympathy, even though it would have been so easy at this point. Argument, even though Ree had told me it didn't really matter. I now regret not knowing more about her affair partner, AP. It doesn't matter who the other guy is. What matters is that she chose to leave you. Whether she admits it or not, she destroyed the marriage. Facts are facts, brother. Ree should write a book for the betrayed. Damn it. During Kathy's work vacation, I had the perfect opportunity to move out completely. I gathered everything valuable that was mine, including clothes, laptops, and as I left, I felt as though a heavy burden had been lifted. The hurt would take time to heal and there would be baggage to deal with, but I needed time to myself and to quickly and quietly get rid of her. I didn't take any shared goods or furniture. I left a note before I left, which was a lengthy explanation at first, but I decided to make it brief. I wrote I hope it was worth it on a piece of paper, and I placed my wedding ring on top of the note on the kitchen table. I didn't feel proud of my confession because I hadn't yelled or screamed and she didn't deserve it. In my opinion, she ignored everything we had, including our future plans, our hopes for a house and a family, and now it was all gone. I owed her nothing at all, she could handle the fallout. I hadn't made any plans or contacted a lawyer, all I wanted was a fresh start and some clarity. The mountain air was exactly what I needed when I got into my trailer and started running the following week, and it was. Kathy texted me things like "we just landed, we're having a team dinner," and other things like that while she was away. She also asked me, "Where are you?" In a few emails, "Why haven't you gotten back to me?" I didn't answer, and when she got home, my phone exploded with calls and texts. She kept trying to reach me, but I ignored her. Her mother also tried to call me after the first day, but I didn't answer. She didn't try to reach my father because we're not close, and he's the only family member I still have. After a week of being ignored, she sent me a text saying, "I'm sorry, things got out of hand. It didn't matter that I was involved with someone at work, you were absent a lot while I was preoccupied with my work, I simply made an error, I intended to terminate an error." I've been waiting for this confession all along, but somehow it only ended up being this, urgent. I didn't have any dreams about a future with this woman, so why couldn't she be honest? Her cries for me to go back and work on the marriage eventually became pathetic, and I refused to reply to her, even after she stopped bothering me for a few weeks. I didn't want her to find out where I lived or to pry into my life. I didn't want this woman to ruin my haven. She then started sending me insulting texts like "you're a coward, one day you refuse to speak to me, you have no." I don't remember all of the texts, but they all seemed like excuses with little sincere regret in one ear, so I let them go, and in the other, I changed my mobile number. In June 2018, I got an email from Kathy telling me that she had hired a lawyer and was going to file for divorce. I said, "Okay, that sounds good," which sparked a flurry of emails asking that I come home so we can talk about where I am able to visit you, Paul. Although neither of us had any closure, she seemed to care more about that than I did. I would occasionally think of her for a few months, and yes, the grief would come to me suddenly like when I heard a song we used to enjoy, but after a while I just stopped thinking about it. She also wrote that she would stop bothering me if I consented to an uncontested divorce after realizing this wouldn't work. After I consented, I was genuinely free a few months later after I moved out of our apartment. Despite being a few years younger than me, She is fantastic and quite adorable. She calls me her mountain man and adores my way of life. I'm not in a rush to commit, but I also don't intend to give up on women completely. I have no intention of moving out of the trailer anytime soon. About her update too, now that I'm officially divorced, things are going great. In fact, I met a wonderful girl just down the hill from my house while running on the trail. We clicked when I help her replace a flat tire. I am aware that everyone reacts to these situations differently, but I was fortunate enough to be in my 3rd year of marriage and not yet a parent, so I believe I acted in my own best interests. You don't have to spend your entire life with someone who cheats. If you experience something similar, try not to think about it too much. Keep living your life as you improve yourself. It will get better. Being outside and simplifying my life made everything easier for me, including the grief and my ex-wife. Finest possible life. I just wanted to give you an update on my ex-wife's condition. As I mentioned in my previous post, I left our previous residence, which was about 2 hours away, and I ran into her last weekend at a coffee shop I frequently visit in the town close to my home. I was concerned that she was trying to find me, but fortunately I was able to leave before she noticed. Third update, I went into town this past weekend to get groceries, and stopped at my usual coffee shop. I was using their free internet to finish some paperwork for work, so I finished and left. I was heading to my pickup when I heard someone shout Paul. When I looked across the street, I saw that my ex-wife was waving at me, and finally Armageddon had arrived. She rushed across the street toward me, and I stood there in shock, as if expecting an embrace. She walked over and held out her hand, but I instinctively stopped her in her tracks by holding it out. I felt like an animal in a cage, but I did okay. Let's find a table or something and we can talk for a minute. I finally gave in when she asked if we could come to my house, but I firmly refused. At the end of the street, she led me down to a bench outside a small store and started by stating how much I had changed and how much she had changed me. She then added, "I've been searching for you, Paul. I've wanted to see you since I heard you moved here. Can we have a conversation, guys?" She was wearing a tank top, small white shorts, and her hair in a ponytail, just like I used to enjoy. She was really putting on the charm, and I had my radar set high. She was obviously trying to activate the sex appeal, so I had to control myself so I could see where this was going. She started by apologizing for the affair, saying that after I left, karma had had a serious impact on her when her employer found out about it. Became so tense that she eventually quit her affair partner, AP, who was engaged at the time, received criticism, and was moved to a different department within the company. She responded by telling his fiancé the truth after he blamed her for everything, which led to their breakup. At this point, she bowed her head and started crying. I didn't say anything, I just sat there and looked around. She stood up straight and looked at me for a while. When I asked her what she wanted from me, she assured me that she had no plans to have an affair. She claimed that she was drawn in by the politics and positioning of the company, that her AP used his charm and influence to corrupt her, and that she felt she was taking advantage of him just as much as he was taking advantage of her after I accused her of cheating. She said she intended to come clean, and that she drank after work to relieve the guilt she was feeling at the time because she detested herself. She said she felt so foolish and alone, and that it felt like her heart had burst with loss the moment I left. She wanted a fresh start and hoped we could start a new relationship with her AP right away, but I refused to talk to her or contact her. I just looked at her and told her, "You have no right to come out here and undo all the harm you have done. Do you think I'll overlook everything you did to destroy our union, as I previously stated we were done if you cheated? Forgiveness does not exist. I saw you enter a hotel with him one evening. Were you aware of that?" I realized that people were starting to notice that my voice had been getting louder, so she grabbed my arm and began crying after letting her SOB on my shoulder for a while. I pushed her away, saying, "I deserve all this," looking up at me. "I am certain that I do. If nothing else, would you allow me to take you out to dinner? Our relationship will not be resumed because you destroyed it as soon as you left me. Before you left me, I had no idea how much I loved you. You broke me as much as I broke you. I can't forgive myself, and I don't want to until the day I die." She started crying uncontrollably and hyperventilating, so I picked her up and gave her a hug, which seemed to be my only way to calm her. "I'd rather not go, but I would like to talk more and make sure that we are open about everything. Please, Paul, spend more time with me than you have in the past." When she calmed down, I knew that I had broken her heart just as much as she had broken mine. We found a quiet place to continue our conversation, and I asked, "How did you find me?" After some consideration, she said, "No," with a little giggle. She explained that she had asked how things were going when she had run into Stacy a few weeks earlier, and Stacy hadn't mentioned that she had noticed me. Kathy made her tell her everything I had warned her not to tell her. We ended up having dinner at a charming little place with a patio. I made sure we didn't drink anything because I wasn't going to give her an excuse to be nice to me or say she wasn't so drunk that she couldn't drive back, but she was hesitant, but Kathy persisted, and Stacy finally gave in. All she knew was that I lived somewhere nearby and was in town on her days off, so she started coming here to check on me. I kind of laughed when she said that, thinking damn Stacy can't keep her trap shut. She blushed. After our conversation, I escorted her to her car. She insisted that she hadn't dated anyone else since I left and vowed fervently that I was the only person she wanted, so she pushed me hard to stay longer. I told her that it was still too early for me to go down that path. She begged me to return, but I didn't say yes. I gave her my new email address and said, "You'll just blow it up with texts and calls." She sobbed over it, but ultimately agreed with my decision. I asked her directly if she would have forgiven me if I had cheated on her before she got into her car. She said, yes in time, but only if we saw a marriage counselor and worked through the healing process with lots of talking, maybe even a binding agreement. After pausing to think, she said, okay, maybe I could do that in 5 or 10 years. I would wait if that's what it would take. She then left. She said she would send me an email with information on returning to town the following weekend. She said, God damn it, Paul, I will always love you and I will do anything to prove it, with both of my hands in hers. Her words really caught me off guard, and even after she left, I couldn't imagine us getting back together. Even though I felt better about the incident, I couldn't see her as a friend at the time. Perhaps she was, but even that was a mystery. I went home, enjoyed a long run, had some beer, and reflected on how far I had come. I had no idea that I had the luxury of time to sort through it and gain perspective, but it was all still too vivid in my mind. This is probably going to be my last update. When I first posted my story on Reddit, the moderators kept removing it. In summary, I had been ghosting my ex-wife for over a year before she found me. She wanted to make amends and start over with us. You will be extremely disappointed if you thought I would be the typical. I'm not in a rush to make changes. I have my own self-determination plan, and I've enjoyed the company of a few women and friends. She sent me a lengthy email last week expressing her love and regret for the affair. She offered to come out and stay with me for the weekend once more. In my response, I silenced her and told her that I had no plans to make amends with her. I'm completely happy living alone, taking advantage of my secluded position, and keeping things simple at 32. She responded in a telling way, acknowledging that she had accepted a job offer from a different state and that her true intention had been for me to accompany her, believing that my remote work would make the move easy. I had no intention of reconciling and declined to give her my phone number. I no longer know or trust you because you made your bed. I hope the best for you and perhaps we might become friends in the future, but not right now. She wished we could start over somewhere new because she wanted to visit me in person to try to convince me that she was running out of time before moving. Fortunately for me, her time was up because I had a week of business travel planned. I'm glad I won't be seeing her anymore, but I expect to receive a few more emails about her needing to find someone else and possibly cheating on them. To everyone reading this, make the most of your life, let go of the past, and give yourself the strength to move on. Thank you for your support. If you haven't already, please subscribe and click the notification bell to keep up with more startling real-life stories that are happening in your area.